The end of this winter's logging had some wind-fallen trees and some that had been broken by heavy snow loads. Did reset an area in the machine for measuring it, even if I'm not too worried about how well it measures. It will not be a lot of volume required a restart when resetting it. And some of the trees are quite well frozen into the snow, so a bit of a struggle to get them out. A lot of times you need to kind of cut it at the root to have that end loose and then move further in to start pulling and twisting a little. It probably cost me more in fuel and wear on the machines that the wood brings in, but with the signs of the bark beetles I've seen, and this is perfect breeding ground for them, so it kind of has to be done. Had some issues with that it didn't get the diameter measurement, and cycling the delimbing knives that has the sensors in them in and out solves that. And it's a bit rotten, it's cracked at the bottom, so we'll be doing a short pulp piece at the bottom of this one. Did a quick check that the length measurements is okay, at least. Was a tiny bit off, but I solved that with just changing a little in the computer to set the goal a little over the desired measurement, so, and it will have to be good enough for chasing these few cubic meters back on that other tree, and that changed my angle of attack to have a little more leverage with the machine, being able to get it out of the frozen snow. Wiggling it back and forth a little and jerking at it with the feeding usually loosens it. Also played skidder in some areas, bringing back out a few pieces they got in to clean up and not have to go everywhere with the forwarder, saving some miles or meters with that one, and I have to be there anyway, and if I'm able to drag what I've taken down with me back out, it's saves some time, I think. Well, fuel at least. Took a few that haven't fallen fully down but are leaning quite heavily also, that I suspect will lose the struggle, and a lot of them are a little rotten at the bottom, but some of them, a couple of discs, are enough to find fresh material. Here it had a bit of a lean. So I had attempted to cut it a tiny bit from the other side, but it was leaning over too much. I couldn't really get the harvester head to grab on the other side. This was the biggest tree that I found on this search for cleaning up. More talking after I have processed this. Also passed by the tree I had been out stripping the bark off that had fallen during the last spring and was heavily infested with these bark beetles. And since the machine was close by, it's not worth anything really. It's just for biofuel, for burning if being sold, but I think it's actually quite fresh, so if the sawmill is fired up, it might be put through the sawmill this summer. Well, not the smaller pieces, but the 2, maybe 3 pieces from it. Since the forwarder was going to go through some narrow stuff, the load flex was folded back in again. Folding it in is easier than folding it out, at least. And then taking the snowmobile out to get to the harvester. We are a few days back in time now. I will actually try to... The last little bit of this video will be up to date, and the diesel heater had refused to start even if when it was set on timer, but it wasn't that cold, and this one fires up very nicely. Playing a little more skidder, bringing things out to the road actually this time, I think. A few more fallen over trees. Same procedure on most of the little bigger ones. Try to loosen cut it by the root, and I try to grab it further in and start pulling and twisting and getting it to come undone. And here I had a couple of trees very close to a ditch. And I had hoped I wouldn't have to drive over the ditch, that I could just grab them from this side and pull them out, but the one further away you can see was too stuck, and the angle and the leverage was too bad, so had to go over it a little. So changed my angle of attack to go straight across, and I aim for this tree stump here because it should have some roots around it to maybe not mess up the ditch too much, because water have started flowing in the different ditches around, and it's so there is movement under the snow, and I was able to get better leverage and pull that one out. And here I had an issue because I had a couple of long trees and did not want to bring the harvester in here. You can see pools of water where I had to step across it a little, and there was another ditch that required crossing also to access these, so I wanted to pull these all the way out and just have to make one round trip over it. turned out that the last turn to make it was too tight with this these long trees, so I ended up cutting one more that was in the way. But it was rotten anyway, so. And with that out of the way, it was possible to pull it all the way out next to the road where it could be processed, and the forwarder could reach it from the road. Went out the next day. Now it's very easy to drive the snowmobile around. It's rock hard, you can walk on the snow without sinking down, and did that to kind of get a better feel on what route to take with the harvester. Here I'm trying that kind of chest mount I used for the snowmobile for the camera, and the angle for that is not that great. Well, I have it angled up a little bit too high here. I pushed it down a little, but I think it's still better to have it closer to the window, or maybe a little further back to see more of the display. If you have any preference on angle of the video, it will be a long time before any more harvester video, unless it's ranching stuff, because the season is done now. The next morning the diesel heater fired up without issues. Had made it back home with the harvester, and my dad brought out the first load. I thought we would fit everything in one load on the forwarder, but that wasn't the case. He had to go and get a little bit more. We had discussed if the tractor could be able to go get that, because it's more fuel economic, but decided that that would be a big struggle for it going up the hill. So, but we still attached the lumber, the timber wagon for the tractor on the back, because we are gonna shuttle this material down very close to the big road, because our road won't handle the trucks for several weeks, maybe a month or two now, or during the summer at all. So we separated the pulp on one, and the forward will bring down the timber. One of the trunks had a bit of too much rotten stuff at the bottom. It would have been rejected, but removing a few pieces, and the rotten section is small enough that it should pass as a class 2 timber. And my dad brought up the snowmobile when he came back up, because that was left out there, and he brought it up sideways. Luckily no damage. He had lost the windscreen down the hill, and the saddle had opened up, but nothing had fallen out and nothing was damaged, so had to go get the windscreen. And my dad loaded up the last few things and sorted things out. So I had taken the harvester to grease that up before parking it until later, and grease gun, the nozzle for it, one of the jaws in it broke, and I highly doubt you can buy just new jaws, but I will talk to the place I bought it at and see if they can sell me a set of new jaws for it. Since we're gonna bring it down the road, we're removing the tracks for it now. This one might see some work during the summer, also being helpful at lifting stuff. So tracks are coming undone. We took a few shortcuts using ratchet straps and not the other setup we have for tightening the tracks or It took a little bit of hammering, a little bit of struggling, but still came off quite easily this time around, so we are getting better at it. It had to be moved around some to access the other locks for the tracks, but not too bad once they all were loose. Well, I think we still have one left, but had to be moved a little more again. And with them all undone, it could be driven off, and this is up to date. This was recorded today, and we will bring the material down tomorrow morning when it's frozen. So that's the end of logging the winter of 2021.